My friends, there's more to life than RNG and grid maps. You have to maintain a team, build shelter, and survive the Technicolor nightmare of alien hellscapes. My name is Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman, and welcome to Dead in Antares. Hello everyone, if you enjoy what I do, including covering new and upcoming turn-based tactics and strategy games such as the previously mentioned Dead in Antares, then a like on this video and a subscription to the channel would be very much appreciated. Thank you so much. And also, of course, huge shout out and thank you to Ishtar Games and publisher Nacon for sponsoring this video. Sponsorships like this help keep the channel running, and it also gives us the chance to check out games that may not have come across my radar before, so win-win for everybody. Also, if Ishtar Games is a familiar name, it should be. You see, they are the developers of the absolutely stellar The Last Spell, which I have covered extensively on the channel in the past, which I know many of you enjoy. So of course, I was on board to check out Dead in Antares when they approached me about it. So what are we dealing with here today? Well, Dead in Antares is the third game in a franchise by Ishtar, the Dead In series, which is a combination of a sort of story-based survival game with turn-based tactical combat. In this latest title, it is the far future, and Earth, perhaps unsurprisingly, is falling to all sorts of pollution, corruption, potentially war, etc. And it's up to us and our intrepid team of absolute brainiacs to go out into the world, out into the galaxy, and see if we can't find some sort of energy source, maybe a new place to live, something that is going to let us save humanity and the Earth, or at the very least get humanity off of Earth if it comes down to it. Unfortunately, much like in Interstellar, one of my favorite movies of all time, it doesn't take long before wormhole shenanigans are afoot and we get thrust into a completely new and extremely hostile alien planet with a destroyed ship, a bunch of crewmates still in cryo, and basically a hope and a dream to try and complete the mission and even keep ourselves alive in the first place. To do this, you'll have to go about repairing what systems you can, scavenging what resources won't kill you, surviving engagements with the local fauna and flora, and potentially wake up the rest of your crew to help you continue that fight. If you're lucky, maybe you'll even be able to figure out just what exactly brought you here, why this place is so strange, and why a few of your crewmates seem to be particularly shifty about it. I've really been enjoying my time with Dead in Antares because it is so different from other turn-based tactics, turn-based strategy type titles that I've played, because the combat isn't necessarily the focus, at least not in the early part of the game. There's a much greater focus on learning who your characters are, getting the resources that you need to build things up, intelligently distributing your resources to manage everyone's health and mental wellness, and then over time, actually getting into more direct confrontation with the forces that may have brought you here in the first place. It's definitely more of a slow burn, but the snappy pace of camp management from day to day, going out into the world and exploring, and actually considering what it is that you need to upgrade or manage at any one moment to not wind up running directly into failure, keeps things moving along, even if you're more of a combat-focused individual. With the general overview of the game out of the way, we're going to do our standard here, go through the audio and OST, the art and visual style, break down the gameplay mechanics, and then give my overall thoughts and impressions, maybe a little bit of feedback at the end. As always, you will find timestamps and different chapters in the play bar for each of those different sections if there's a particular part that you're the most interested in and want to jump straight to it. So right off the jump, Dead in Antares obviously has a very different visual style if you, like me, were first introduced to Ishtar Games through The Last Spell. That said, I do really enjoy what they have going on here. You absolutely get that visual novel feeling with the way the characters move around in the environment as you assign them to different stations, and once you get into combat, the different animations and idle motions that they have. It's simple, but it's effective, and the actual art of the characters is very good. Everyone is very clearly distinct and stands out well against the insane Technicolor backgrounds that you find yourself existing in, and the designs themselves sell the idea of what each type of character is most likely going to be trying to do. For example, Captain Amalia is kind of clearly rough and tumble, maybe more of like a gunslinger Han Solo type, and you can tell she's got the leather bomber jacket, her shirt's a little tore up, like she's not really wearing a uniform per se. Compare that to Combat Medic Will, who is not only your tank, but also the doctor, and you kind of get that sense. There's a lot of whites and reds in his design. He's huge. He's clearly well built. He's a guy who's going to stand on the front lines and protect his team while also healing them up. And it's very obvious to see where he's going to be going in the camp to do tasks based off of his stature and strength as well. Beyond just the designs of the characters, though, the overall feeling and atmosphere of this planet Antares is so distinct. It's so different, so obviously alien from everything that's going on with you and your crew and what you brought from Earth. There's weird blendings of plant and animal, trees, you can't tell if it's weird writhing bark or if it's made of worms or both. Everything and anything gives off the impression that it has bright, blaring colors to warn you away from it because it's poisonous, like, animals and plants on Earth do. But then you kind of have to overcome that fear because most of the time it's not actually that bad for you. Are there things that are bad for you? Absolutely, and we'll talk about that. But most of the flora and fauna and overall wildlife is relatively harmless, and kind of getting past that preconceived notion of what works on Earth is going to be a major factor in figuring out exactly how you're going to survive on this new weird planet. The audio and OST are also quite nice. I do very much enjoy them. There's actually some music with lyrics in the title, especially when you're sitting around camp chilling and talking to your characters, that I really enjoy. It evokes a similar sort of feeling in me as when you're walking across a field in Death Stranding and some music kicks in that maybe you've heard before, maybe you never have, and it just kind of adds to this sense of mysterious journey in a way that sometimes just basic background music doesn't always sell. As far as general audio design, sound effects, environmental sounds, and the like, it's a little bit more of a mixed bag. I do really enjoy some of the in-battle sound effects with very crunchy electronic sounding hits on shields or big power attacks and the like. And I do also enjoy the sound effects of navigating around the menu. Feel very, I hesitate to say analogs, it's obviously a very digital set of menus in terms of the in-game world, but you get that sort of feeling of actually clicking through things, activating systems, or at least I did, and I did enjoy that. However, there are also some sound effects, again, particularly in combat, that feel a little lightweight, low impact. Maybe that's just because I really like a very heavy sounding game, and this is not one of those, I would say, in terms of the overall weightiness of it. So it could just be a personal preference thing, but I did find that there were some sound effects that didn't quite land for me. That said, being out in the world and hearing the ambiance of the environments around you and potentially some of the effects that can happen as you're interacting with different explorable objects or even just messing with things around camp did help to immerse me into the overall world and was definitely a net positive, a good, enjoyable part of the experience. Now, of course, the biggest aspect that we're always here for when we're talking about any new game, what are the actual mechanics? How is the gameplay? And overall, I really enjoy what Dead and Antares has to offer here. As I mentioned at the top of the video, your primary form of gameplay, at least in the beginning chunk of the game, shall we say, is your survival systems. You're going around camp, establishing new research stations, new gathering stations, managing your characters, both in terms of their physical and mental health, and overall trying to make sure that from a day-to-day standpoint, everyone is alive, healthy, and able to continue the mission. As such, you're going to be looking at a lot of different stats. Everything from what you would expect of like injuries and sickness and dehydration to overall levels of stress and fatigue. And anything and everything that you do can have a positive or negative effect on one or more of those stats. And if any of them get to 100, that character dies and you get a game over. These two aspects of the game's mechanics definitely overlap very heavily and are probably the biggest overlap in mechanics, where having someone go and mine ore or gather water for your daily needs is going to tire them out, potentially stress them out, depending on what personal traits they have or what environmental factors are at play. They might get some injuries either because an accident happened or just they're worn out, or it could be like razor hail outside and they get some cuts. Maybe they wind up getting some sickness from futzing around too long with some sort of strange scientific system that they don't fully understand. All of these things and more can happen, so while yes, it is obviously very important that you keep enough water on hand and keep enough food on hand to make sure that people have their daily needs met, you also can't push characters so hard that they wind up having some sort of physical or mental break. And having that chance to balance what you're doing with who and where is very important, especially considering the fact that, of course, each character does have their own strengths and weaknesses. One might might be really good with physical tasks and be great for powering the generator and gathering water and mining ore, whereas another might really only be suited to doing research, handling medical tasks, and potentially working on the radar system. Because of this, in the early game, you may feel very limited and everything might feel very simplistic, but as time goes by and you wind up being able to wake up more of your crew from cryosleep, you'll find more and more characters with different sets of overlapping strengths and weaknesses, and who also have different traits that you need to manage to get the best results and keep them from absolutely going bonkers. Later in the game, you wind up having a few different characters who, if you don't do specific things with them or don't do anything with them at all, they just start to have mental breakdowns. So you need to always have them on task, and they're very good at what they do. But at the same time, this means that they're workaholics, and you need to make sure that they rest so they don't push themselves to the brink. You can see where the balance starts to come in here. This is doubly so as you begin to unlock more of the more esoteric, shall we say, research and crafting stations, things that are a little bit more out there than your basic like water gathering and power generation. And then it really becomes a game of how many characters can I afford to have in function at work at a time? Who can do what? Who needs to rest right now or I risk a game over? And what resources or supplies do I need on hand immediately or in the near future to make further research happen, to build new items, to be able to construct or maintain, because things do degrade over time, your research and gathering stations? Where can I make that balance? And it definitely became a very strong flow as I got further into the game and I had more things to do and characters to do them with. Of course, the overall health stats that you have, as I've kind of been thinking of them in my head, again, your stress, your injuries, your fatigue, etc., are not the only thing to be looking at with your characters, as they do have other stats such as their exploration, stealth, capabilities with different types of research or physical tasks, as well as combat stats that you're going to want to consider largely when you're going out on expeditions, but are also what influence, what tasks around camp that they're able to handle. And this is where things definitely start to get interesting, again, as you get deeper into the game and start running into more enemies to fight and the like. Whenever you go on an expedition, you can only bring 3 characters at a time, and of course, as you would expect, bringing a character on an expedition will increase their fatigue, maybe get them some injuries, sickness potentially, depending on what you're on into, but what stats they have will also influence the different skill checks that you may wind up having to make when you do go out into an uncharted area of the world. For example, if you wind up running up on a strange nest of potentially venomous insects, but in which you can see a large pool of purified water that is vital for not only maintaining your hydration of your crew, but also reducing their stress levels, you're probably going to want a character with either good stealth or good agility to be able to get in, get out, and either not disturb the insects or move fast enough that if they do disturb them, they don't get bit. If you don't have a character with you that's good at those types of things, you're going to have to make the choice. Do you gamble it and have a lower percentage chance of success without some sort of repercussion, or do you leave and come back later with a different expedition, but wasting time and potentially resources in the process? These are the types of decisions that you have to make as the captain of the expedition to judge what's worth risking and what's not. And again, as you unlock more characters and wind up encountering more complex encounters, that's where you can really start to see how you're going to have to make some tough choices later in the game. That's before you even get to a lot of the different binary choices, or even like trinary choices, I guess you could say. Is that a proper word in this case? I don't actually know. English degree, everyone. Did me so much good. But yeah, you might wind up encountering different choices where you can only make one or the other. And it will very clearly have an impact on where the story is going to go, and can very well be determined by what stats you have on what characters at the time. So you do really need to think very carefully about who you're bringing on any given exploration mission and what they're able to contribute to the party before you even start getting into combat. And that's a whole nother thing. So I guess we should talk about that. The combat in Dead and Antares is very classic turn-based sort of tactics strategy or turn-based RPG style combat. It's a little bit of a mix of both, in my opinion. I really enjoy it. You've got 2 rows for both your allies and your enemies. You will always have 3 characters in your party, and I've never seen more than 3 monsters or enemies in the enemy party. You're only ever going to do 1 encounter at a time from what I've seen, and your chances of running into an encounter increase over time as you go on successive exploration missions before you finally basically are forced to run into one, and then the percentage chance resets. Because there are relatively few battles, especially in the early game, they can be fairly lengthy. There's high HP pools, relatively low damage, and a big focus on the application of status effects and moving yourself and the enemy between rows, it does get very thinky, especially if you have a setup where you really want to have one person in the front line and two in the back to make sure that your skills work in particular ways, only for some horrifying meat moss goat alien to decide that he really doesn't like your frontline tank and headbutts them to the back, thus making your back line your front line, because that is one of the mechanics. At first, the battles are quite easy, even on some of the higher difficulties that I played on. However, once you start to get to more difficult enemies that are able to buff, debuff, heal, give themselves dodge, do big AoE damage, and otherwise cause a nuisance for your party, you do need to start thinking a lot more tactically about what you're able to do and how you're going to apply your AP, because you do have a limited amount per turn. However, on the flip side, you do also have a wide range of abilities available to you, including your overcharge abilities that allow you to get big, sort of ultimate attack effects, whether it be attacking the entire enemy party, healing your entire party, buffing everyone, debuffing the enemy, that type of fun thing. There's no major RNG except for like the application of status effects. If you're going to get hit, you're going to get hit. If you're going to hit the enemy, you're going to hit the enemy, period. The only thing you might be able to do is apply block and or evasion to yourself, and same thing for the enemies, to try to mitigate damage in that way. And things like block and armor are very strong. Each character has their own class that has all of its own unique perks. Some overlap in abilities, although I've been starting to unlock some characters that look like they'd be the exact same as previously unlocked crew members, but then who either have their own attacks or their own traits that switch things up. And you are able to research new attacks, new skills, and upgrade those attacks and skills back at camp once you decide that your current combat capabilities are no longer up to snuff. So while the game is very front-loaded with survival and story mechanics, you will get much deeper into the combat the further you go into the game itself. I'm currently at the point in my run where I'm strongly considering putting a lot of time and resources into upgrading those abilities, as I've started running into story battles that can hit at pretty much any given point outside of my normal exploration. Like, I could just be going around camp. I've done my first round of my 2 sets of tasks that I'm able to do with everybody, and then suddenly, holy crap, there's aliens attacking. Everybody get your guns, get your swords and your lightning shields, and let's see what we're able to do here, because these things are nasty. So having the chance to actually get some upgraded stuff and make it a little less likely that I'm going to take a bunch of injuries and or deaths on my characters is suddenly feeling a lot more pertinent, and I'm really enjoying that added sense of pressure. You get the chance to learn the world, you get the chance to meet some of your characters, get accustomed to the very important survival mechanics, and once you've started to get that kind of under wraps a little bit, it's like, boom, here comes the alien assaults, get ready for it. It's felt like a very healthy progression in terms of my own understanding of the game, and I'm very excited to see what else I can do with my characters as I continue to upgrade them more. And I guess that's a good point at which we can jump over to my overall impressions, because we've kind of been doing that already. I do really enjoy Dead and Antares. I really did not know what to expect when I first went into it. It's very different from things like The Last Spell, which I absolutely adored, so I didn't know if I would like it or not. But now that I've come to understand the systems, I've wrapped my head around the fact that I'm doing a lot of survival management gameplay alongside my more typical turn-based tactical fare, and now that I'm seeing much more aggressive enemies, some major story developments that I'm very curious about, and having more characters to have each other bounce off of and learn more about the overall setting and just the world in general, I'm definitely invested. I have no idea where the story's going to go at this point, though I do have my suspicions. I think there might be a little bit more subterfuge and underhanded dealings going on with some of our characters, who seem a little less shocked about the sudden wormhole appearing and shooting us off into a different sector of space than they really should be, especially because the one who's least suspicious about it also has the skill Black Hole, and she's also the scientist who seems to know the most about this type of thing. I wonder if that's going to go somewhere. Put a pin in that prediction. We'll have to see if it winds up coming true. But I want to know if it's going to come true, right? I want to know more about these characters. I want to know more about the situation on Earth, and I'm particularly interested in the motivations and thought processes of the clearly sentient alien species that we've begun butting heads with. And considering that I've included into the fact that there are apparently 5 different endings to the game, it seems like there'll be a lot of opportunities for me to either screw up and wind up wanting to go back and get better endings, or be able to chat with all y'all if you wind up playing it for yourself and we maybe get some different endings and can figure out what changed where and what we enjoy about the endings that we got or dislike about the endings that we got and want to go back and try to do a little bit better on the next run. I like the kind of cozy nature of just maintaining our space colony camp and building things up and making sure I've got everything running smoothly. It definitely starts to tap into that just one more day sort of feeling, which I don't often fall prey to. It's not something that I get super easily sucked into compared to a lot of people. So the fact that it was hitting even me tells me that there's something special going on here and that Ishtar have got a little bit of an interesting set of mechanics on their hands. I definitely intend to play more of this for myself, and by the time you're seeing this video, you'll be able to see it for yourself as well, because Dead and Antares is out right now. It currently has a launch discount on Steam if you're watching this within the release window. I'll have a link to the game in the Steam description if you want to go and check it out for yourself, and maybe we can strike up a little bit of a lively discussion about what exactly is going on in this bizarre alien Technicolor landscape. For now, though, I think I'm going to wrap this one up here. My name has been Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. Thank you once again to Ishtar Games and Nacon for sponsoring this video. I do very much appreciate it. I hope that you guys have enjoyed not only the video, but potentially the game as well if you check it out for yourself. I highly recommend that you do. And until the next time, I hope that you all have a good night. Stay safe and healthy out there, everybody. And remember, be good to each other, y'all. Bye now.